Silence pressed on the small royal hospital room. Machines hummed in soft rhythm as the queen lay awake, staring at the untouched silver tray. Her hands were thin, her lips dry, her eyes fierce. She had refused every plate the chefs carried in with careful pride. Cream soups. Clear broths. Soft bread. Nothing stayed. Nothing felt safe. She seemed to listen to the food the way a traveler listens to a dark road, sensing a trap she could not name. The head chef, Anton, stood a little back with his white hat in his hands. He had fed presidents and sailors and children who needed to smile. He had fed the queen since he was young. Today, his throat felt tight. He took a breath, stepped forward, and offered another bowl. It was a simple porridge with the faintest hint of cinnamon. He said it was gentle and clean. He promised it was safe. The queen pressed her lips together and turned her head away. The bowl trembled in his hands, and he stepped back, his face burning. Outside the door, the palace felt smaller than ever. Guards whispered. A doctor pretended to read a chart, but his eyes kept flicking to the queen's face. A young cleaner, Myra, slowed as she passed with her cart. She was careful, always careful, but even she paused to look. Something was wrong in a way that words could not hold. The air was full of questions. Then the queen's eyes stopped on a small paper bag in a guard's grip. The guard stood near the window, trying to be invisible. His name was Yusuf. He was new. The bag looked ordinary and warm, like a morning street corner. The queen lifted her hand a little. Her finger pointed to the bag. The room froze. "What is that?" she asked, her voice rough. Yusuf blinked. "My lunch, Your Majesty." "Bring it to me," she said. Anton moved without thinking. "Your Majesty, please. We do not know where it is from. We cannot be sure. We have prepared food that is clean and tested." He tried to keep the fear out of his voice. The doctor nodded quickly. "It is better to wait," he said, ready to list rules, but the queen was already sitting up. Her hand did not shake now. Her eyes were set, calm and iron. "Bring it," she said again. Yusuf came forward slowly and placed the bag on the side table. He opened it with gentle fingers. Inside was a simple sandwich wrapped in paper, a small tomato, and a hard-boiled egg with a crack like a little white river. The smell was clean and human and kind. Bread, cheese, a slice of onion, a smear of something sharp. The queen reached. Anton tried to stop her, then stopped himself. He looked at her and he felt the old lesson return. The kitchen served her, not the other way around. The queen took a bite. Chewed. Swallowed. The room did not breathe. She took another bite. Then she closed her eyes and rested her head back and a small sound left her throat. Relief. The doctor leaned in, ready to ask a dozen questions. Her pulse settled. Her color warmed a little. She took a small piece of tomato and ate that too. Nothing bad happened. The silence broke into a wash of whispers. Anton stared at the half sandwich as if it were a message. He felt both hope and shame. He felt something else too, thin and sharp. He had washed every leaf and weighed every gram. He had turned the kitchen into a temple of control. Yet this simple lunch had crossed the line and somehow become medicine. "Why?" he whispered to himself, and the word was not only a question but a wound. Myra, still by the door, watched the queen's face soften for the first time in days. She looked down at her cart. She had cleaned the cold room the week before. She had noticed a corner where the floor felt damp, and she had told nobody because she was new and unsure and afraid of making trouble. Now the memory came back with a cold hand on her spine. She took a little breath and held it. The doctor asked the guard where he bought the lunch. Yusuf said he made it at home. Bread from the market. Cheese from a small shop near the bus stop. He said the word bus and the queen smiled, tired but real. The doctor began to list ingredients. The queen kept eating small bites, slow and careful, like a person crossing stones in a river. The food stayed. Her stomach did not turn. For the first time in days, her body did not reject what it was given. Anton stepped out into the corridor, pressing his hand to the cold stone. He could hear the old clock in the hall tick like a hammer. He remembered the smell he had noticed near the cold room door. It had been faint, a green damp smell, almost nothing. He had told himself it was the drains, then moved on because the lunch rush pressed on him. He felt that choice now like a weight. He thought of the sealed jars, the labeled tins, the new supplier that had promised purity. He thought of rules and papers and stamps. He thought of how fear had crept into his kitchen without a sound. Inside the room, the Queen finished half the sandwich and set it down. Her voice was stronger. She told Anton to come back in. When he did, she looked at him with steady eyes. "I need you to find out why my body trusts this and not yours," she said. Not with pride. Not with anger. With a kind of quiet demand that sounded like care. He bowed his head and said he would. Myra's hands were on her cart handle. She felt the words climb up her throat and stop. She wanted to speak. She wanted to say she had seen something. She wanted to say the corner was wet and the labels had looked wrong and a delivery had arrived after midnight. Her fear was not of punishment but of being small. She swallowed the fear. She opened her mouth. Then, down the hall, a tray crashed. A shout followed. The sound sprinted toward them, hot and fast. Anton turned. The doctor raised his head. Myra stepped back. The Queen glanced at the half sandwich, then at the door. The shout grew closer. The guard by the door reached for his radio and froze. His face emptied of color. He looked at Anton and then at the Queen. "Something is happening in the kitchen," he said, and the room felt the floor shift beneath it. The kitchen was chaos. Silver trays on the floor. Bowls overturned. A smell of burnt sugar and metal filled the air. Anton burst through the swinging doors, heart pounding. The sous chef stood by the stove, pale and shaking, holding a ladle like a weapon. It turned black," he said, pointing to the pot. The creamy broth inside had gone thick and dark, like ink. Anton stared at it. That same broth had been made for the Queen the night before. He touched the edge of the pot and felt the cold sweat of fear climb his neck. "Did anyone taste this?" he asked. "No, chef," said one of the junior cooks. "It smelled wrong. Like old water." Anton leaned close. The scent hit him, faint but familiar. Something sour beneath the sweetness. Something that didn't belong in food or anywhere near a human body. He told everyone to step back. His voice was calm, but inside his chest, it felt like glass cracking. The Queen had nearly died. Not from her illness, he realized now, but from something that came from here, his kitchen. Outside, the corridors hummed with whispers. News traveled fast through marble and echo. The Queen had eaten a guard's lunch. She had survived it. For the first time in weeks, she was awake and speaking. But the miracle made the kitchen feel cursed. Myra stood in the doorway with her cleaning cart. Her heart beat faster every time Anton looked her way. She wanted to tell him what she knew, about the cold room, the damp corner, the unlabeled jars. But she was afraid. People like her didn't talk to chefs who had their names stitched in gold thread. Anton turned and saw her. "You there," he said. "You were near the Queen's room yesterday, weren't you?" "Yes, sir," Myra said softly. "Come with me." She followed him down the hall to the cold storage. He opened the heavy door and flicked on the light. Frost glittered on steel shelves. The air smelled faintly sweet, too sweet. Anton moved along the racks, his fingers tracing labels. Cream. Milk. Broth base. Preserves. He stopped. A crate at the bottom corner had no label at all. Only a smear of something sticky along the edge. Myra swallowed. "That was here 2 nights ago," she said. "It was wet underneath. I told Mr. Bell, the night porter, but he said it was fine." Anton crouched down and pried open the lid. Inside were sealed glass jars filled with a pale yellow mixture. He twisted one open and the smell hit him again, that same sour-sweet stench. He slammed it shut and looked at the mark on the lid, a faint stamp, nearly rubbed off. Only 3 letters could be read. Chicks. He frowned. "That's not one of our suppliers." Myra shook her head. "The delivery came after midnight. I saw it on the cameras when I cleaned the hall. The driver wore no uniform." Anton stood. "Show me." They went to the small control room, where an old man named Harris managed the palace cameras. He grumbled at first but changed when Anton said the Queen's name. They rewound the footage from 2 nights ago. At 12:47 a.m., a truck rolled in through the side gate. The license plate was smeared with dirt. A man stepped out wearing a dark cap, carrying boxes into the service door. Myra leaned forward. "That's him," she whispered. Anton's eyes locked on the image. The man moved quickly, never showing his face to the camera. When he passed under the single light near the dock, Anton froze. The man's shoes, polished, black, no scuffs. He had seen them before. He turned off the monitor. "No word of this to anyone," he said quietly. "Not until I know what it means." Back upstairs, the Queen was sitting up in bed, eating again, a bowl of clear broth made from the same ingredients as Yusuf's sandwich. Her doctor was nearly smiling. "I think she's turning a corner," he said. The Queen's eyes were sharp. "Has anyone found out why your food failed me, doctor?" "We're running tests," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Queen looked past him, toward the door. "Find Anton," she said. "Tell him I want to know the truth. Not guesses. The truth." Anton returned to the kitchen with Myra behind him. He called for the kitchen ledger. Every delivery, every invoice, every supplier, listed in neat handwriting. But the crate marked HX was nowhere. Someone had written over the line, the ink still fresh. Myra pointed to the bottom of the page. "That handwriting, it's different." Anton nodded. He recognized it immediately. It belonged to the purchasing manager, the one who had worked there for years. The one who never came to the kitchen anymore, who handled deliveries at night. He looked at Myra. "Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone about this." The next morning, the Queen felt stronger. She stood for the first time in weeks, her hand on the window frame. Outside, the gardens glowed under pale sun. But in the reflection, she saw Anton waiting by the door. His face told her enough. "You've found something," she said. "I think so," Anton replied quietly. "Something's been added to your food without my approval. We're still testing it." "Is it poison?" He hesitated. "If not poison, then close enough to it." The Queen's voice was calm but cold. "Then find who did it. And don't let them see you coming." That night, the palace was still. Myra couldn't sleep. She walked past the kitchen doors and heard Anton's voice low on the phone. "Yes," he said. "I saw the stamp. HX. Don't lie to me, Thomas. You swore those suppliers were vetted." He paused. His voice hardened. "The Queen almost died. If you're hiding something, I will drag it out myself." The line went dead. Outside, the wind rose. A door creaked somewhere in the dark. And down the corridor, a pair of quiet, polished shoes clicked once against the marble floor, and stopped. The palace was no longer safe. Night in the royal palace carried its own kind of silence. It wasn't peace, it was pressure. Every corridor seemed to hold its breath, every light too bright, every sound too sharp. The kitchens, usually the warmest heart of the building, now felt like a crime scene pretending to be a workspace. The pots gleamed like watching eyes. Anton stood by the counter with the ledger open before him, the ink smudged under his thumb. The letters HX echoed in his head like a drumbeat. The delivery, the strange jar, the spoiled broth, it all pointed somewhere dark. Myra entered quietly, her shoes whispering on the tiles. She carried a flashlight instead of her usual cleaning cart. Her face showed both fear and determination. "You shouldn't be here this late," Anton said, without looking up. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "And you said you needed help." Anton closed the ledger and nodded once. "Then help me look for what they tried to hide." They started with the storage rooms. Each shelf gleamed with glass jars labeled in perfect script. Salt, sugar, flour, cream, order hiding deceit. Myra's light passed over a back corner, where the frost on the metal wall had melted slightly. The floor there was damp again. Anton knelt, touching the puddle with the edge of his glove. "It's leaking from somewhere," he murmured. "But the pipes here were replaced last winter." Myra pointed to a small grate behind the crates. "There," she said. The air that drifted from it smelled faintly rotten, like sweet milk left too long in heat. Anton frowned. "That's not from the kitchen. That's chemical." He shifted the crates aside. Behind them was a narrow hatch door, nearly invisible beneath layers of paint. Someone had tried to hide it. He twisted the handle, but it wouldn't move. Rust sealed it shut. Myra leaned in. There's something written here. She traced the letters with her finger. Inspection 09-15, do not open. Anton's chest tightened. That inspection date was 3 months before the Queen had fallen ill. Who ordered this locked? He asked softly, though he already knew. The purchasing manager. Thomas Laird. Anton stood. We're opening it, he said. It took a screwdriver, a hammer, and 10 minutes of prying before the hatch creaked open. A rush of cold air spilled out, sharp and sour. The beam of Myra's flashlight pierced the darkness, catching metal shelves stacked with sealed containers. Labels peeled away from moisture. The word preserve appeared again and again. Anton stepped inside, careful not to breathe too deeply. The air bit his nose. These aren't on any list, he said. He picked up a jar and turned it in the light. The liquid inside shimmered faintly green. What is that? Myra asked, her voice trembling. Something that doesn't belong in food, Anton said. And something someone wanted hidden. They heard footsteps then, soft, steady, coming closer through the main kitchen. Anton motioned to Myra to stay quiet. The footsteps stopped just outside the storage room. Then the lights flickered. A voice drifted through the air. Calm. Familiar. Working late, chef? Thomas Laird stood in the doorway, his round glasses reflecting the flashlight beam. He looked at them with a tired smile, but his eyes were cold. Anton straightened. You've been buying from unauthorized suppliers. Thomas shrugged. Sometimes official channels take too long. The palace demands quality and speed. I found an alternative. An alternative that almost killed Her Majesty, Anton snapped. Thomas's smile didn't waver. Almost, he said. But she's alive, isn't she? And the public will never know how close we came. That's what matters. Myra stepped forward. You knew the food was bad. Thomas looked at her as though she were an insect. You shouldn't be here, girl. Go back to your cleaning. But Myra didn't move. I saw the delivery, she said. You brought it in yourself. For a moment, silence filled the cold air like smoke. Then Thomas sighed. You shouldn't have seen that. Anton's jaw tightened. He moved slightly, placing himself between Myra and Thomas. You'll explain everything. Now. Thomas's expression changed, his smile fell away. You don't understand, he said quietly. This isn't about food. It's about loyalty. Before Anton could reply, Thomas turned and walked out, his shoes clicking against the tiles. The sound faded down the corridor. Anton exhaled slowly. He's hiding something bigger, he said. We need proof. They began collecting samples. Small jars, markings, anything that looked suspicious. Myra found a crumpled paper wedged behind a shelf. She smoothed it out under the flashlight. It was a delivery note, HAX Product 7, Batch 043. And beneath it, a signature, T. Laird. Myra looked up. He signed it himself. Anton took the paper. Then we can prove it. Before they could leave, a faint hum started overhead. The refrigerator fans turned on automatically. But the noise grew louder, the temperature dropping fast. Frost formed on the metal walls. The vent system, Anton muttered. It's sealing the room. He pushed the hatch door, stuck. Frozen from the inside. Myra banged on the metal. It's not opening. Anton tried to force it, but the handle snapped. The cold was cutting into their skin. He pulled off his chef's jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Don't panic. There's another way out. He scanned the walls and spotted a maintenance vent high above. He dragged a crate under it. Climb, he said. Myra hesitated. What about you? I'll be right behind. She climbed, fingers stiff from the cold, pushing the grate open. The vent was narrow, but she squeezed through. Anton followed, breathing hard. Behind them, the storage room filled with frost, the jars cracking from pressure. They crawled through the metal tunnel until they reached a vent that opened near the pastry section. Myra dropped down first, landing in a pile of flour sacks. Anton followed, collapsing beside her. Both of them shivered, gasping. Myra looked at him. He tried to trap us. Anton nodded. And that means he knows we're close. From somewhere in the distance came the faint sound of footsteps again, slow, deliberate. Come, Anton whispered. We take this to the Queen. Tonight. They slipped out through the side corridor, carrying the paper and one small jar wrapped in cloth. Behind them, in the freezing dark, the hidden room continued to hum, like a secret trying to stay buried. And far away, Thomas Laird stood in his office, dialing a number on his private phone. It's done, he said softly. They found the room. A pause. Then he added, yes. Proceed as planned. The line went dead, and the palace sank deeper into its quiet, dangerous night. Morning arrived in streaks of gold across the palace courtyard, but inside, it was cold with tension. The Queen sat near her window, a wool blanket around her shoulders, watching the mist fade. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes were awake, clearer than they had been in weeks. For the first time, her body seemed to fight for her, not against her. Dr. Haldane stood beside her, notebook in hand, his brow furrowed. Your Majesty, your vitals are improving, he said carefully. It's unexpected. Not unexpected, the Queen replied softly. Something changed. My body knows it. She set the teacup down and looked at Anton, who stood a few steps back, his uniform still stained faintly with frost from the night before. He hadn't slept. Myra was beside him, clutching the folded paper they had found. The Queen motioned to them. You've been in my kitchen. Tell me what you found. Anton bowed. Your Majesty, we discovered a hidden cold room, sealed and off the records. Inside were jars marked with the initials HX. The contents were spoiled, tainted with something not meant for food. Dr. Haldane's pen paused. Spoiled how? Anton hesitated. The mixture had mold growth. I believe it may have released a toxin, something slow, but powerful. It could explain the reactions you suffered. The Queen's lips pressed together. And the supplier? HX Products, Myra said quietly. The crates were signed by Thomas Laird. The name seemed to drop through the room like a stone. The Queen's jaw tightened. Thomas had served the palace for 15 years. He was loyal, or at least, he had been. I want him brought here, she said. But when the guards went to fetch him, they found his office empty, his keys missing, and his phone disconnected. Only one thing was left behind, a burned note in the bin, the words barely visible, they won't let her survive. Dr. Haldane picked it up with tweezers, his face pale. This isn't sabotage, he said. It's something else. The Queen looked from him to Anton. Then what is it? Before Anton could answer, Myra whispered, someone else is in danger. Everyone turned to her. Her voice shook, but she went on. When I cleaned the storage area, I saw more crates marked AX, meant for the staff kitchen. The food for everyone here. Anton's stomach dropped. If those ingredients were used beyond the royal meals, then others could be poisoned too. The Queen rose, steadying herself on the chair. Lock down the kitchen, she ordered. Nothing leaves it. No deliveries, no meals. She wavered on her feet, and Dr. Haldane reached for her, but she lifted a hand. No. I'm not fragile anymore. Her eyes glinted. If my body fought to live, then so will I. Downstairs, the kitchen was a battlefield without fire. Guards stood at every door. Anton moved through the staff like a general, checking every pantry, every label, every jar. Myra followed him with a clipboard, writing down what they found. Half the supplies checked out, half didn't. They came across a crate labeled cream base, HX. Anton pried it open and stared inside. The smell was faint, but familiar, the same sour sweetness that haunted him. He called for Dr. Haldane, who arrived with testing strips. They dipped them into the liquid, and within seconds, the paper turned dark blue. Fungal toxin, the doctor murmured. It's not fast-acting, but over time it damages the liver and nerves. Small doses in rich food, easy to hide. Anton clenched his fists. And we've been feeding it to her for months. Dr. Haldane looked grim. This isn't accidental. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Myra glanced toward the back corridor. Thomas wasn't alone, she said. I saw another man with him once, the one with the quiet shoes. Anton turned sharply. Who? The driver. He brings deliveries but never signs his name. Always wears gloves. Always walks like he's trying not to be heard. Anton's memory flashed, footsteps behind the freezer, the flicker of movement on the security camera. He felt the truth forming like ice in his gut. He's not a driver, Anton said. He's someone else. That evening, the Queen requested to eat again. Not palace food, not medical broth, just the same kind of sandwich that had saved her before. Yusuf, the guard, prepared it himself under Anton's supervision. The Queen ate slowly, every bite steady. Dr. Halden watched the monitor. Your body's responding. The toxin's fading. The Queen smiled faintly. Then we're winning. Anton bowed. Not yet, Your Majesty. The palace isn't safe until we know who sent that food. Her expression hardened. Then find out. Use my authority if you must. He hesitated. That could mean questioning royal staff. Then question them, she said. No one is above this. Later that night, Myra sat alone in the staff hall, her notebook open. She was writing down everything she'd seen, dates, smells, faces, small moments that had once seemed meaningless. A shadow moved across the doorway. You shouldn't be writing that, a voice said. She looked up sharply. It was the driver, the man with the quiet shoes. He stepped into the light, face unreadable, gloves still on. I was told to collect the old records, he said. Myra's breath caught. Thomas sent you? The man tilted his head. Thomas was useful. But not careful. He reached for the notebook. She stepped back. You poisoned her, she said, trembling. You almost killed the Queen. He smiled faintly. Not me. I just delivered what I was told. Who told you? She demanded. He paused. Someone who's been waiting a long time for a change in power. Before she could speak again, he slipped away, silent as breath. Myra stood frozen, clutching the notebook to her chest. She didn't see Anton until he grabbed her shoulders. What happened? She told him everything, every word, every look. Anton's face turned pale. Then it's worse than we thought, he said. This isn't just about food. This is about the crown. Outside, the palace clock struck midnight. The Queen slept peacefully for the first time in months. But in the shadows beyond her window, someone was still watching. And for the first time, her survival wasn't just a miracle. It was a threat. Rain lashed against the palace walls that night, drumming a restless rhythm over the stone. The storm seemed alive, like the sky itself was warning them. The Queen slept under guarded watch, while the kitchens, once full of warmth and laughter, were now dark and silent. Anton stood by the window in his small quarters above the kitchen. He hadn't changed out of his uniform. His eyes were fixed on the courtyard below, where a black car sat idling under the rain. No lights, no movement, just the faint hum of the engine, steady as a heartbeat. Someone was waiting. He turned sharply when he heard soft footsteps behind him. It was Myra, her hair still damp from the storm. She clutched the notebook close to her chest. He came again, she whispered. The driver. Anton's face hardened. What did he say? Not much. Just that Thomas wasn't careful. And that someone higher gave the order. Anton nodded slowly. His lying in part, but not all of it. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the same crumpled note they'd found in Thomas's office, now smoothed flat. They won't let her survive. Who's they? Myra asked. That's what we're going to find out, he said, his voice low. The next morning, the palace woke uneasy. Guards were doubled, deliveries halted, every mouthful of food inspected twice before being served. Yet the sense of safety was gone. Rumors whispered through the halls, about poison, betrayal, even ghosts in the kitchen. Anton ignored them all and focused on one thing, tracing the driver. The security officer brought a logbook to the Queen's Council chamber. No official driver under that description, he reported. But someone's been entering the side gate using outdated credentials, belonging to a man dismissed 2 years ago. Anton leaned over the log. Dismissed for what? Smuggling palace goods out at night. Never caught fully in the act, but suspected. Myra frowned. What was his name? The officer flipped a page. Elias Dunn. Anton froze. The name hit him like a blow. He remembered it, an apprentice from long ago, back when Anton had first become head chef. A quiet man. Clever hands. Quick temper. He had left after an argument over contaminated supplies. Anton whispered, he used to work here. In the kitchen. That afternoon, the storm returned, heavier this time. Lightning flashed over the gardens as Anton and Myra stepped into the storage cellar. The smell of damp stone filled the air. Anton moved toward a locked metal cabinet, one only senior staff had keys for. He unlocked it, revealing old archives, invoices, recipes, and photographs. He pulled out a thick folder marked Personnel, 10 years past. Inside was Elias's file, short, unremarkable, except for one strange note scribbled at the bottom. Transferred to external contractor HX, 2018. Myra's eyes widened. He wasn't dismissed. He was moved. Anton felt the pieces snapping together. HX. Elias Dunn. The poisoned preservatives. The quiet shoes. It wasn't a random attack. It was revenge, years in the making. He slammed the folder shut. Come on. We're going to the loading dock. The dock was empty except for rainwater pooling under the flickering lights. The delivery truck sat abandoned, its rear doors slightly open. Anton climbed in, flashlight in hand. Inside were crates, identical to the ones marked HX, but these were filled with tools, not food. Wires, glass vials, chemical jars. Myra found a clipboard pinned near the door. Look, she said. A delivery schedule. But this isn't for food. It's for maintenance. Anton took it, scanning the paper. Each entry was signed with the same initials, ED. He turned just as a voice spoke from behind them. Still searching for ghosts, chef? Elias stood in the rain, coat drenched, the same polished shoes glinting beneath the light. His face was older now, lined, hollowed, but his eyes burned the same way they had years ago. Anton stepped out of the truck slowly. Why? He asked simply. You could have walked away. Elias smiled faintly. Walked away from what? The humiliation? The years of being blamed for your mistakes? You think I forgot? Myra stepped forward. People are dying, Elias. The Queen. The Queen, he interrupted coldly, took everything from me. Her kitchen destroyed my name. HX was mine once. My creation. I sold purity, quality. Then the palace banned me after your chef accused me of contamination. Anton's throat tightened. He remembered now, Elias's experiments with preservative blends, his obsession with extending shelf life. Those mixtures were unstable, Anton said. You knew they were. Elias's eyes glinted. Unstable, yes. Dangerous, yes. But brilliant. And now they've done what they were meant to, expose the rot in the palace. Lightning cracked above them, throwing their faces into flashes of white and shadow. Anton's voice was calm but sharp. You poisoned a woman who trusted her people. No, Elias said softly. I poisoned a system that devours loyalty. He stepped closer, and Myra flinched. In his hand, he held a small vial, its liquid faintly green under the light. You can't fix the palace, chef. It's already sick. This, he raised the vial, is just the truth made visible. Anton moved before he thought. He lunged, grabbing Elias's wrist. The vial slipped, shattering on the wet ground. The liquid hissed, eating into the stone. A sharp, chemical smell filled the air. Elias shoved him back, eyes wild. You can't stop what's coming, he shouted. It's already everywhere, in the food, the cellars, the stores. You'll never clean it all. Guards arrived at that moment, weapons drawn. Elias didn't run. He simply raised his hands, rain dripping down his face. His expression wasn't madness, it was peace. As they cuffed him, he looked at Anton. You still cook for her, he said softly. But now she'll know what her trust tastes like. Hours later, Anton sat in the Queen's study, dripping rain onto the carpet. He told her everything, about Elias, about HX, about the revenge hidden behind the recipes. The Queen listened in silence, her face unreadable. When he finished, she said only one thing: he may be gone, but his poison remains. Clean it out, Anton. Every trace of it. Anton bowed. I will, Your Majesty. As he left, Myra caught his arm. He said it's everywhere, she whispered. What if he was telling the truth? Anton looked back toward the dark kitchen halls. Then, he said quietly, we're running out of time. And outside, under the flickering lights, rainwater slid toward the drains, carrying with it a faint, pale green shimmer. The rain stopped the next morning, but the palace didn't wake to sunlight, it woke to noise. Voices rose from beyond the gates, an uneasy crowd gathered under umbrellas and cameras. News had leaked. Someone had told the press that the Queen had been poisoned inside her own palace, and that the food meant to heal her had nearly killed her instead. By noon, headlines flashed across every screen in the city. The palace poison, is the Queen safe? Former employee arrested, inside job suspected. The walls that once hid secrets now vibrated with whispers. And inside those walls, truth was beginning to rot faster than food. Anton stood in the grand kitchen, sleeves rolled up, watching his team stare at the morning broadcast playing on the wall screen. His face was pale but steady. Myra stood beside him, notebook clutched against her chest like armor. The reporters talked about Elias Dunn, calling him the mad food chemist, the ghost chef, the poisoner of royalty. But Anton knew the story wasn't done. Elias wasn't the mastermind, he was a tool. Turn it off, Anton said quietly. The screen went black, leaving only their reflections staring back. He turned to the staff. From now on, nothing leaves this kitchen without my signature. Not a crumb, not a drop. You all saw what happened, we were infiltrated. If anyone so much as touches an unlabeled jar, they're out. Understood? A murmur of yes, chef followed, shaky but loyal. When they left, Anton slumped against the counter. Myra stayed behind. You didn't tell them everything, she said. I told them enough, Anton replied. If they knew how much we still don't know, they'd panic. Myra flipped open her notebook. You saw what Elias said before he was taken away, it's already everywhere. What if he meant the supply lines? The shipments that come from outside? Anton's gaze shifted to the window. Beyond it, the loading docks gleamed in the morning mist. That's exactly what I'm thinking. By afternoon, the Queen had called for Anton and Myra to join her in the council chamber. It was a room of gold and silence, now filled with the sound of controlled fury. Ministers, advisors, and security heads surrounded the long table. The Queen sat at the head, her expression calm but sharp enough to cut through pretense. She wore no crown, only a plain shawl and tired eyes that had seen enough deceit. Chef Anton, she said, her tone cool. You and Miss Myra uncovered more than most of my advisors. I want to hear everything. Anton bowed slightly. Your Majesty, the contamination traces back to HRX products. The company was founded under Elias Dunn after his dismissal. But he wasn't acting alone. Someone inside the palace authorized every delivery. Someone still in this palace? She asked. Yes, he said. We believe so. Myra stepped forward, holding out her notebook. We found overlapping records, 2 sets of ledgers. One real, one falsified. The fake ones were routed through a shell company named Rainsford Exports. They supplied kitchen preservatives and received payments from the palace treasury. The room stirred. Ministers exchanged looks. The Queen's voice lowered. Who approved the payments? Anton hesitated. According to the records, your brother, Lord Halric. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the ticking clock seemed to stop. The Queen's fingers tightened around the armrest. My brother, she said quietly. Myra nodded. The signatures match, but we don't know if he knew what they were funding. A minister tried to speak. Your Majesty, Lord Halric oversees logistics, not procurement. It's possible someone used his authority. Or his ambition, the Queen interrupted, her voice suddenly cold. That night, the palace became a fortress. Guards sealed every door. The royal family stayed confined to private wings. Rumors rippled through the staff: betrayal, inheritance, conspiracy. Anton and Myra worked through the night, tracing shipments, matching codes, building timelines. The deeper they went, the clearer it became: this wasn't just food poisoning. It was an attempt to unseat the throne itself. At midnight, Myra found another clue: a digital manifest hidden inside a folder labeled Royal Archives 2018. It showed a private order for a large quantity of flavor stabilizer, the same substance that turned toxic in the Queen's meals. The order was made on the same day Lord Halric assumed control of palace logistics. Anton rubbed his eyes. He was part of it, or he covered for someone who was. Myra looked at him. Should we tell the Queen? He nodded. But first, we confirm it. They sneaked to the eastern wing, Lord Halric's quarters. The hallways were dim, guards stationed at every turn. Anton used his old kitchen keycard, one that granted access to most service passages. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and something faintly metallic. They found his office behind a closed door. Papers lay scattered across the desk. One drawer was locked. Anton searched the side shelves while Myra found a thin metal letter opener. She wedged it under the lock and twisted until it gave. Inside were documents, contracts, receipts, and a letter marked confidential, HRX Holdings. Myra read aloud: payment received in full for Special Formula 43, delivery confirmed to Royal Kitchen. Anton took the paper and flipped it over. There was a handwritten note: ensure she eats nothing unapproved. When the transition is complete, we restore normal supplies. Myra's voice broke. Transition? Anton's expression darkened. He planned to take her place. The next morning, the Queen met them in private. Her brother stood beside her, his face pale but proud. I've heard what you found, the Queen said. My brother denies it. Halric's tone was smooth. Sister, this is madness. The chef and his servant are mistaken. Those documents are for legitimate exports. You've been deceived by a disgraced employee. Myra stepped forward. We have proof of your signature. Halric's jaw tightened. Forged. The Queen raised a hand. Enough. Her gaze swept between them, then settled on her brother. Tell me, Halric, would you betray your crown for power? He smiled faintly. Power? No. But for the good of the nation, perhaps. Anton's stomach turned. The Queen stood. You tried to kill me. To call it duty does not cleanse it. Halric's face changed, calm slipping into something feral. You were weak, he hissed. Dying. The people needed strength, not pity. The poison was never meant to kill you, just replace you. Guards moved forward. Halric turned to Anton, his eyes cold. You should have stayed in your kitchen. He was taken away without a fight. When the doors closed, the Queen turned to Anton and Myra. Her voice was softer now. You've done more for this crown than anyone here. The people will know the truth. Not the headlines, our truth. She looked out the window where dawn was breaking. The poison is gone, but the palace still hungers for something honest. Let's feed it. Anton nodded. Then we'll start with breakfast, Your Majesty. And for the first time in weeks, the kitchen would open, not to hide, but to heal. But as the sun rose over the wet stone walls, Myra noticed something. On the window ledge outside the Queen's room, a small glass vial, its seal broken, glinting faintly green in the morning light. The poison hadn't left yet. It was waiting for its final course. The morning the truth was supposed to cleanse the palace, the air smelled of bread. Not polished marble or perfume, just bread. Warm, ordinary, human. The scent drifted through the halls like a promise that life would be normal again. But inside the Queen's private dining hall, silence clung like dust. Every breath, every glance, felt borrowed from the night before. Anton stood at the long table, hands folded behind his back. Myra was beside him, pale but resolute, her notebook tucked away for once. They had scrubbed the kitchen from ceiling to floor, destroyed every jar marked HX, and tested every ingredient twice. The Queen had ordered a public meal, a symbol of recovery and truth. The world would be watching. But truth, Anton knew, had a taste of its own, bitter before it healed. At exactly noon, the doors opened. The queen entered with quiet dignity, dressed in simple ivory, no jewels, no crown. She looked smaller somehow, but her eyes burned bright. The council followed her, journalists behind them, their cameras blinking like nervous eyes. The public would see this as proof that the queen had survived the poison and reclaimed her power. Anton placed the final dish before her. It wasn't royal cuisine. It was a simple plate of toasted bread, eggs, and a slice of cheese, the same meal Yusuf had brought that first day she dared to eat again. The queen looked down at it, her lips curving faintly. "You've brought me the meal that saved me." Anton bowed. "Because it's honest food, Your Majesty. No tricks, no secrets." She lifted her fork but paused. Her gaze moved across the table, to her council, her guards, the staff lined up by the wall. And for a moment, Anton saw it, the hesitation of a survivor who still felt hunted. Then she took the bite. The room held its breath. The cameras clicked. The queen chewed slowly, swallowed, then smiled. "Delicious," she said, her voice soft but strong. "You may all eat." Applause filled the room like a storm breaking. Relief washed over faces that had been tight for days. The sound carried through the palace, out to the crowds waiting beyond the gates. The queen had lived, and so had the trust her people had nearly lost. But Anton didn't join the applause. He watched her carefully, the old instinct still alive, the fear of what food can hide. He turned to Myra, whispering, "Something's wrong." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Her color," he murmured. "It's fading again." Myra looked. The queen's face had gone pale. Her hand trembled as she reached for her glass. The smile slipped, just slightly. Anton stepped forward. "Your Majesty." The queen's fork clattered against the plate. Her breath hitched. She pressed a hand to her stomach. The hall fell silent. Dr. Halden rushed to her side. "Get her to the infirmary, now." Cameras flashed wildly. Guards shouted. The meal that was meant to heal had turned into another disaster. Anton's heart pounded as he grabbed the plate. "Don't touch anything," he barked. He sniffed the bread, it smelled fine. The eggs, the cheese, normal. But something else lingered. Something faintly metallic. Myra stared, horror dawning. "The water," she whispered. "The glass." He grabbed it. The rim glinted under the lights, tiny crystals clinging to the edge. Not visible, but enough to kill. Dr. Halden looked up. "She's stable for now," he said, voice tight. "It's mild, but it's the same toxin. Someone slipped it into her drink." Anton turned toward the staff line. Every face looked terrified, innocent, or pretending. Then he saw it. A movement by the door. A guard lowering his head too quickly. "Yusuf." Anton froze. The guard who'd brought the first sandwich. The one who had saved her, now standing too still, too calm. He stepped closer. "Yusuf," he said carefully. "You poured her water?" Yusuf didn't answer. "Why?" Anton asked, voice shaking. "You saved her once. Why now?" Yusuf lifted his head, and for the first time Anton saw the truth in his eyes. Pain, not hatred. "I didn't want to," he said quietly. "They said they'd kill my family if I didn't finish what Elias started." Myra's throat tightened. "Who?" He looked toward the council table. One man stood apart, hands clasped, Minister Carvel, the same official who had first handled the palace supply accounts. His face was composed, almost serene. Yusuf whispered, "He gave me the vial. Said it was her medicine." Guards moved instantly. Carvel didn't run. He simply sighed, as though the weight of his choices had finally landed. "You think a single queen can change a kingdom?" he said coldly. "You're feeding a symbol, not a person." The queen, still weak but conscious, turned her head. "Then let this symbol stand." Her words cut through the hall. Every camera caught it. Every citizen watching outside saw not a victim, but a monarch refusing to die quietly. Carvel was dragged away. Yusuf fell to his knees, sobbing. Anton stood frozen, trembling. He had spent his life feeding the powerful, but never had food carried such danger, such meaning. Myra touched his arm gently. "You saved her again," she whispered. He looked at her. "No," he said softly. "This time, she saved herself." That night, after the chaos had settled, the palace lights glowed soft and golden. The Queen insisted on one final act. In the Great Hall, before a crowd of citizens and cameras, she appeared not in royal robes but in a plain white dress. On the table before her sat a loaf of bread, nothing more. "My people," she said, her voice steady though her body still weak, "you have seen deception within these walls. Poison that wore the face of care. But you have also seen truth, simple, humble, unadorned. This bread fed me when all else failed. It came from the hands of those who work, not those who command. So today, I share it with you." She tore the bread in half and handed a piece to Anton, another to Myra. Cameras flashed, but for once the light felt pure. "This," she said, "is the meal that saved a crown, not because it was royal, but because it was real." The hall erupted in applause. For the first time, Anton saw not fear but hope in every face. Myra smiled through tears. Outside, the crowd cheered. The storm had finally passed. Later, when the hall emptied, Anton stood alone in the kitchen. The smell of warm bread still lingered. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had once unknowingly delivered poison, and felt something lift from his chest. In the quiet, he whispered to himself, "No more secrets." And from the window, the last light of dusk touched the flour-dusted counter like a benediction. The palace had almost been destroyed by what it ate, but in the end, it was fed by honesty. The Queen lived. The kitchen was cleansed. The poison was gone. But the story would never be forgotten.